Well, good morning, everybody. Here's some of the highlights in the forecast pattern here for the next couple of weeks, plus some new long-range information and a quick look at South America. But to begin with, this is our National Weather Service All Hazards Weather Map. I want to encourage you to go to agweather.com. This map is right there in the second row on my website, and you can just take a look at your region and match up the colors. But what I want to tell you is this. We've got 3 systems lined up in the next 10 days. They're going to be producing very, very strong winds. We've already got blizzard warnings out for significant portions of the country, including the plains, the Cascades, and we're going to watch this system expand into a large area of winter storm warning that stretches all the way through parts of the Midwest. To the south, there's a severe weather threat. There's a flooding threat into the southeast and up the east coast, as well as some of the snow begins to melt from the previous system. If you are on social media, you need to be following the National Weather Service and the Weather Prediction Center and each of your local forecast offices, because they've been doing an incredible job over the last few years of keeping folks informed. And you can see here some of the big threats. We have our blizzard threat, heavy snow threat. This includes parts of New England. And then we have the flooding threat that's going to be across parts of the south. There'll also be a severe weather threat down there as well. The temperatures are about to change in a big way. We talked about this last week. We're building in ridges of high pressure into Alaska and into Greenland, and that's going to start to displace colder air right in the midsection of the country. So over the last 30 days where that's not happened, it's been very, very mild. This is your next 5 days. This is day 5 through 10, and this is day 10 through 15. A substantial outbreak of colder air is going to last us well past the middle of this month until we can get the jet stream to line out and flood kind of parts of the south and west with a bit more mild air, but that's coming at least 10 to 15 days from now. The setup is pretty amazing. For the next 10 days, we're going to watch trough after trough after trough after trough roll across the United States. And why this is all happening is even out to 10 days from now, we're kind of bridging this part of Alaska, the Bering Sea, the Arctic, over to Greenland, the North Atlantic with high pressure. So anytime you see this, this lets the jet stream do its work to produce systems that roll across the country. Now, over the weekend, we saw snows that came into the Cascades, some places picking up a couple of feet here, some snow in the Sierra Nevada and through the Rockies. Lighter snow throughout the center U.S. and the upper Midwest, but take a look at the snowfall totals here for Pennsylvania, New York, and parts of New England, some places picking up well over a foot of snow. As we go forward in this forecast, the area that I'm going to be concerned about for flooding and severe weather risk is going to be down here in the lower Mississippi Basin in the southeast, and then up the east coast, especially as some of that snow begins to melt. The map you're looking at here is the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation through early this morning on Monday. Now, with the next 3 systems that are going to come through, the wind gusts are going to be ferocious. We could get winds with the blizzard conditions today back here in the western plains. That'll be 50, 60 miles an hour, and that same wind pattern is going to carry up through parts of the east. In fact, a big section from here to here of the country. And then each system as it enters the northwest is going to pack a punch as well, so expect winds here enhanced by the mountains to be in that 50 to 60 mile an hour range as well. On the severe weather side of it, today's severe weather outlook down here along the Gulf Coast. You can see the areas outlined by the Storm Prediction Center. And then getting in tomorrow, we're going to watch this spread from the Florida Panhandle, getting all the way up to parts of North Carolina. So let's go ahead and have a look at it with the high-res NAM model. This is just system number 1. System number 2 will enter the northwest as I play this forward. So throughout the day today, what's going to be very tricky is to watch the transition between rain and snow off and on right into this corridor here. Severe weather in the overnight hours stretching down here in the lower Mississippi Basin right along the Gulf Coast, and the blizzard conditions on the back side of this with strong winds and heavy snow falling. The track of this system has shifted northwest throughout the entire last week of watching it, and that's because it does not have a lot of what we call antecedent cold air out ahead of it to keep the storm track to the south. But this main frontal boundary lashes the southeast, giving us the risk tomorrow night on Tuesday of severe weather, while cold air comes around the backside, replacing this finally all with some snow. Now, while all of that's rolling up the east coast, and look at this, this is that flood threat because we're going to be putting rain on top of snow. While all of this moves east, we're going to watch the next system rolling into the northwest. Again, Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday. And this next system, by the time we get out there to late on Wednesday, is going to develop another low right over the panhandles. The difference is low number 1 went far to the north like this. Low number 2 is going to take a little bit farther to the south track, and then watch low number 3 come way down here. To see that, though, I got to show you the comparison between the GFS and the European. Now, we're going to do this relatively quickly to keep the time of this video down, but this gets us through Tuesday on that first system into Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and evening. Now, the next system is going to form over the Rockies, develop as a panhandle low, and emerge on Thursday night to Friday morning into the central U.S. This will be another severe weather threat, probably on Thursday night into the southern part of the country, and then translating into Friday into the southeast. And as this low wraps itself up, it's going to have more cold air to work with, which means more snow getting farther to the south on its backside. Now, with all that snow getting put down late this week, with the strong winds, I'm not going to be able to rule out the risk of there being blizzard warnings put into this area as well. It's going to come down to timing before anything. This is Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening, and then here comes system number 3 into Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. This is Saturday evening, and then that one's going to emerge in the plains as well. And now do you see how much farther to the south the GFS takes it, the European takes it? That's system number 3 out of this. If we add up all the rainfall in the next 7 days, very, very wet conditions, chances of 3 to 6 inches of rain across the south with that severe weather. That's the European solution. Here's the GFS solution. Total precip 7 days. And on the snowy side of it, I'm just going to show you the maps. The northwest trend and the heaviest snow track is now putting the heaviest snows here after coming through the Cascades and the Rockies. So just take a look at that from the European. This is the GFS. European, GFS. Now the west needs this snow. Just take a look here. You can see how far the basin averages are below average. We need to pack that snow in place. And I want to make a point that that third system next week, next Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm already starting to watch the risk for some ice across the south. Now getting out there and looking at some probability maps, here's the chance over the next 10 days of at least 6 inches of snow. Here's 12 inches of snow. Here's 18 inches of snow. I mean, look at these numbers. Now, the liquid to snow ratio of 10 to 1 is probably not valid. We don't want to use that as gospel truth here because some of these liquid to snow ratios are going to be down to like 5 to 6 to 1, not 10 to 1. But on the wet side of this, let's just do who's got the best chance at 2 inches of rain. Very heavy into this area, and of course in the northwest. The drier side of it will be the southwest, the northern plains of the United States, and parts of the Canadian prairie because the flow is not set up to really deliver the moisture there. And unfortunately, all the way out there to the 21st of January, while the jet extends, which means it's going to target parts of the southwest and then up the east coast, we get northwest flow again into this area, which is why those week 2 forecasts are showing wetter west, drier in this section of the country, and near normal precip coming into this region. Temperature side of this, real quick here. This is today's high temperatures compared to average. Getting into tomorrow, the severe weather set up here. Going forward into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Look at that cold air coming out along the spine of the Rockies here, invading into the plains. This is Saturday and Sunday, and this is why the next system, early next week, gets a chance to take a much more southerly track. That is antecedent cold air. Now, as you noticed, let's look at this. There's the next 5 days. There's day 5 through 10, the full extent of that cold air while the warmth builds into Alaska, Greenland, the Canadian archipelago. Day 10 through 15, if the jet does line itself back up, very El Nino look to it, we're going to start to flood the country with a bit more mild air. I would tell you to expect a pretty volatile temperature pattern through the rest of January into February. Now, the longer range models into February want to paint a very El Nino look, so drier, drier, and drier, which means the subtropical jet stays on, the northern jet comes over the top. Now, will it do that? I'd say that if the MJO pulls back into phase 2 and a piece of it goes out to phase 8, no, I don't think it will look like that. Because historically we know that tends to produce better flow coming off the Pacific, which results in low pressure over the southern United States in phase 2 in January, and then phase 8 in January, tends to look like that as well. So those two phases are not phases that slow things down, but they're competing against our peaking El Nino, which is right here. And some of the forecast models have tried to aggressively end this El Nino by spring, like the CFSV2, but our thinking is this is way too fast. This right now suggests that we're going to go from a strong El Nino to a strong La Nina by July and August. And I think this is way, way too fast. The European model probably has the better solution on that, meaning that by summer we're ENSO neutral, not full-blown La Nina. But either way, it's going to be a competition for the precipitation pattern across the country. Right now, the models are all over El Nino for January, February, March, and I don't like it. I don't think this is how it's going to really play out for these areas. But then they do show that going into February, March, April, March, April, May, very wet conditions for early spring here. And even though you see drier along the west coast, there isn't actually a strong signal that that's going to be the case. It's just shown up in the models. April, May, June, and then May, June, July. If you want to see more on this, go watch the longer video. Get right to the end of it because I'm also going to compare it to the new NMME forecast for February, March, April, May, April, May, June, July, and finally June, July, August. Now, these maps, there's too much competition in the atmosphere for you to trust them. So I'll do the same thing I did in the longer video, put a big question mark over it and tell you don't rely on them right now. They're not going to verify as you see. What we covered at the very end was more in-depth view of South America, but what I want to point out is this. In the first 7 days of January, rains did return. Flooding rain over Cordoba down here in Argentina, some places picking up 10 inches of rain. And as we go forward, the next 7 days still has more rain here and wet conditions into Argentina, but there is the risk that this fades back over drier as we work our way toward that third week of January. What I want to know is, to finish January and start February, does this area go back over wet right when we're going to be going hard after a harvest and the planting of safrinha crops? This is not a good situation to have this wet of conditions at that point. So I'm going to stop there. If you need more detail, watch the longer video. But with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks.